and thank you for joining me, Chris McLean, for another episode of Energy in Africa. Today, we have an amazing woman who is making a significant difference in Africa in the energy sector today. Ana Hajduka is the founder and CEO of Africa Green Co., an energy trading company based in Zambia that is affecting so much more than that one country and has grown to be something that is quite significant. So with little delay, let us get into our discussion with Ana. Good day, Ana. How are you today?
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent. Well, here I am in Calgary and it's minus 20, something like this. And here you are in, are you in Lusaka or are you?
I am in Lusaka and it's good plus 28 or so. So
there we go.
Enjoying the sunshine and some rain.
The diversity that is energy on our planet. So
exactly.
Folks, I'm chatting with Ana, and she is the CEO and president of Africa Green Co. And Ana, would you please give us some background on how you came to be in this position and what Africa Green Co. is about?
No problem. I've never been called president before, but right. So Africa Green Co. was set up to act as a new creditworthy buyer of renewables in the Southern African region. And the region has experienced a number of challenges, as you know, in terms of attracting new investments into new energy capacity, in particular renewable energy capacity. And that is mainly because of a lack of a market to sell to. So we set GreenCo up in order to tie in or link the producers with the industrial and commercial customers directly, and to tie the producers directly with the already pretty liquid Southern African power pool, which is a regional exchange. Therefore, moving the region away from a single buyer model where the state utility has to buy all new generation capacity, significantly encumbering themselves in the process, and the already heavily indebted governments in the process as well. So it's a private sector led new business model, but developed in collaboration with the government of Zambia and the state utility in Zambia called ZESCO.
So that strikes me as a quite a task to want to take on. How did you get involved with this originally?
Right. Well, I was a project finance lawyer for many years, more than a decade, always working on energy projects in emerging markets. 6 of the years of practice were across projects in sub-Saharan Africa, and I fell in love with the continent. Was privy to the fact that as lawyers, we work on these contracts and we would work on, for 3 years just to see one project develop. And if that is a way to scale up electricity rates in sub-Saharan Africa, we will never achieve any of the targets that we're all talking about achieving, whether it be at COP or whether it be anywhere else. So at a time when the model was born, so to speak, or when the idea was born, I was still acting as a lawyer. But in my spare time, I spent a significant amount of time talking to the then executive secretary of the Southern African Power Pool, late Dr. Lawrence Musaba, a wonderful gentleman, a real visionary as to what regional power pools should do in terms of attracting new generation capacity across the countries that form the power pool. And through that brainstorming, through the experience of having worked on many projects that took years to get off ground, so the Africa Green Co concept as an idea was born, and then through collaboration with the Southern African Power Pool and the government of Zambia in particular, we brought the idea from an idea into an operating business model that we are today.
And so that's a 10-year overnight success, or what does that journey look like?
Well, to be honest, it hasn't been that long. It hasn't. But if you look at the fact that what we proposed is a fundamental change away from the single buyer model, a change that required significant legal and regulatory changes, both on a national basis, so complete overhaul of the 20-year legal and energy sector regulations in Zambia, a change in how the membership to the regional power pool is facilitated, or which categories of entities can join. Now all those changes took place. Zambia changed its legal and regulatory environment. The Southern African Power Pool changed its membership categories to cater for entities like us. And all of that happened from an initiation of an idea, which back in 2016 was a 3-pager note, to all these steps having been completed, changed, endorsed by relevant governments and parliaments, etc., to the issuance of a first of its kind trading license that we were issued in Zambia in January this year, to the acceptance of us as the first member under the relevant category to the Southern African Power Pool, called the market participant category, and to us actually starting operations and trading power and working with the first IPPs from which we will procure. So in a way, yes, it took 5 years or so, but taking into account all the groundwork and all the relevant changes that needed to take place, it actually didn't take that long. When you look at it in the context of the regulatory changes anywhere in the world.
And that in itself is quite interesting in it, from your background being legal, being able to dive in and say, here are the regulatory changes that'll make a business work, rather than a business coming in saying, you need regulatory changes so I can be successful. Do you think that is something that DFIs can actually support more, or where do you think that change can be more successful across the continent as well?
I think DFIs can absolutely support, but I think change has to be context driven. Okay. So we got our DFI supporters to support us following the presentation of our model in collaboration with local stakeholders, namely the government of Zambia. So it wasn't a model that was cooked abroad by a particular DFI and then presented to the government of Zambia. The model was established, inputted on, and worked on by us as a private sector and the government of Zambia, and then together presented to the DFIs. And we believe that's a much better model, because no one knows better than the relevant national and regional stakeholders what their vision is for their energy sector. Nothing
the boots
can be
on the ground,
Absolutely. Nothing can be copied and pasted. Nothing can be just moved from one area to the other. It needs to be contextualized and then presented to the DFIs. That's how we did it.
I mean, you led off in saying you were not a lawyer on the continent, but you fell in love with the continent. What is it about the region that you've chosen to be at that regulatorily and operationally and business-wise, you said there is opportunity here?
Yes, there is. I mean, the opportunity here is absolutely everywhere. The potential is there. The need is there. The work is, I would say, very exciting. I also think that where I'm from originally, which is the Balkans, I think culturally I feel at home on the continent. There's actually many linkages, many which are both surprising but wonderful at the same time. So yes, I mean, I don't even know where to really start from.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah. The privatization of energy trading that you have taken on is something that has existed in North America, in some markets, in others, in Europe. Is energy trading and that acceptance of risk as an energy trader a solution to utility level? I guess, it's a combination. There's so many things: generation, distribution, transmission, like all of it, right? What does it solve in your mind? What is the checkbox that it says absolutely this solves this problem?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. The only little problem I have is the word privatization. That word has so many negative connotations in many places around the world, and certainly in developing markets. I would rather call it liberalization of power trading. The model that we are proposing is not necessarily a route to privatize or to unbundle the utilities. We believe that whether you go down the privatization route on unbundling utility is a decision for each country to make. It depends on size. It depends on many, many different issues. There is no one size fits all solution. What I would, however, call it is the liberalization of the trading element of the power trading, which is extraordinarily important. And why it's important and what questions or what problems does it solve is the fact that it gives and diversifies risks of investors into new generation capacity by providing a route to market. I.e., you're not relying on a single risk of a single country buyer, single entity utility buyer, single customer buyer. You have a route to what is a liquid, competitive regional market. And that risk diversification trickles down to then affect a more investment appetite across the value chain of the energy sector industry, namely both generation, transmission, and distribution. So we are looking at power trading as a tool to really trigger systemic change across the entire energy sector value chain, not only, as it was before, looking at adding a certain new generation capacity without looking at what the systemic requirements are when it comes to adding more transmission or distribution capacity to follow, or how do you package the entire supply and demand proposition to make every element of it more bankable. So we believe that providing that power trading capability route to market makes projects ultimately more bankable by providing a route to market and diversifying risks from single buyer models.
So you don't get involved in this is the best engineering solution, this is the this is the best technical solution for AC/DC versus just AC, or any of these kind of things that are out there. No, I want an electron and somebody else wants to buy an electron. You guys figure out how to get it there. And okay.
And you put a good point on, because you say you figure out how to get it there. Before, you wouldn't really need to figure it out, right? So I think IPPs are used to just dropping the capacity at the connection point with the utility that in general owns the grid. And then everything else is for the utility to figure out, i.e. to balance it if it's intermittent, to wheel it to the relevant customers, to provide balancing services if it's intermittent or if there is difference between dispatch and the ultimate requirement. Here we are saying, well, actually, the utility has to be compensated for those services. We need to unpack the tariffs of the utilities so that we know exactly how the private sector should compensate the utility for all the underlying system operations and use of system services, so to give access to third party to their networks. And once they start seeing value of the private sector third parties coming to join their networks in this manner, we are talking about really opening up the market and incentivizing the utilities to allow that such market opening, because the private sector in this regard not only brings more liquidity to the market with new capacity, but actually recognizes the importance of the state utilities and their assets and how they have to compensate them for those.
The idea of you're going to pay for transmission whether or not you're putting something on the line or not, because it's a charge, because it's something that's there and needs to get built and serviced and all of those things that
everyone has to participate in those costs. I mean, if we are working in that system, those costs have to be transparent and in a way, the only unbundling that is an absolute prerequisite for market reform is the unbundling of the tariff. So everybody knows what the cost inputs are into each relevant service.
You made you used the word transparent, and I think that's the part that's most liberating, to use another word, for electricity and energy on the continent, is to say transparency. Why are you 25 cents and why are you 7 cents? Like what is the issue?
Exactly. And what are the methodologies underpinning those numbers? So we all know who is contributing what, there is no double counting, etc. And once there is that, the market confidence follows.
Do you use things like blockchain or those kinds of electronic ledgers to record these sort of things? Or do you use just a traditional Excel spreadsheet kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we thought about it, to be honest.
Okay,
Not yet. I think we're already trying to do too much. It's a lot. So let's start with baby steps. But no, we don't use, we are somewhere in between. We don't use traditional Excel tools. We use a pretty comprehensive energy trading and risk management system that was built for us by some of the major energy sector consultancies in the world, contextualized to the realities of the Southern African power pool in Zambia. And it's an amazing system that allows us to calculate risk appropriately, to derive our trading strategy from our market analytics capabilities, from our inputs from weather-related data, etc., in order to make sure that our projections are as accurate as possible. So it's a pretty comprehensive tool that we have in place that effectively transcribes everything and allows us to trade appropriately without taking some of the crazy risks that some traders have gotten in trouble with, and quite rightly. So it's very important to know and to recognize that the word trader doesn't necessarily have positive connotations in many areas of the world. And if one doesn't have appropriate risk mitigation and other structures in place, it can be quite detrimental and not positive as we want it to be.
So what is your biggest risk as a trader then?
Well, we are not a normal trader, so to speak, because we buy on a long-term basis from the IPPs. So we are taking, our IPPs get a PPA that is 20-25 years in duration. So we are taking a certain level of market risk, because none of the commercial and industrial customers want to buy on a back-to-back basis. Buying on a 20 to 25 year basis for them is too long. So effectively, we do not envisage selling to our CNI customers for longer than 10 years. And that is perhaps on the higher side. The merchant market, of course, the competitive markets of the SAPP is very, very short-based market. It's a day-ahead market, week-ahead, intraday, and monthly. So in a way, we are taking a risk by adding new portfolio capacity, which is our key reason for existence, but having a mismatch and then having to calculate very carefully what is the demand and supply position in each country in the region and across the power pool in order to allow ourselves to take such mismatch in tenors in particular. And where and of course to envisage where the price might go.
Exactly. I was going to say price changes over time, and these are the risks that you take on, and not the the power purchase agreement that is set in stone, or they vary in time.
That's a very good point. Some IPPs are braver than the others. Some lenders are braver than the others.
Okay.
Some lenders and some IPPs are already showing signs of willing to take certain level of merchant risk and share in the upside and sharing the downside.
Yeah.
So we have actually been surprised ourselves that some of them are willing to go down that route, and we are very flexible. If they are willing to take a certain share of risks, both on the downside, then of course we'll let them share on the upside as well.
Yeah.
But most lenders so far, we believe, are more on a conservative work on a conservative basis, and IPPs where they want a fixed PPA, fixed price, perhaps CPI or other indexed, but that's about it. 20 to 25 years, and then we take the risk of both downside and the benefits of any upsides that we might achieve.
There's a marketplace there that is willing to have you be a part of it because you're solving a problem, and you've been able to facilitate the growth of new energy as well. Where do you see the opportunity? If you say you're 20 years, 25 years with an IPP, where do you see the opportunity, for your power pool and the potential for Africa Green Co?
Oh, you mean in 20 years, where will we be?
Yeah, I mean, rather than just, like, is it just you're going to have 20-year contracts in the Southern Africa power pool, and you're a significant piece of the cog of the wheel that makes the Southern Africa power pool go, or do you see growth beyond that?
Absolutely. Even in 10 years time, if we have to buy on a 25-year basis, and in 20 years time, in 10 years time, in SADC, I would be personally disappointed. I want to see a liquid market of such a degree in 10 years time, with multiple players such as ourselves, Greencos, where it will all be who is the best service provider.
Interesting.
And it will be competition on the basis of proper commoditization and service of electricity. So that's what I see in 10 years time in SADC. And of course, I see us being the biggest because we'll be the best service provider. And we
of course.
We very much absolutely expect to be the first to attract others, but to continue being the best. So that's in terms of SADC. But then there's, of course, growth. The East African power pool is growing rapidly and changing as we speak, putting internal processes in place, introducing the competitive markets. The West African power pool is following suit as well. We've engaged with both power pools already. We are following very closely the legal and regulatory developments in that market. We are following very closely, and the reason why our headquarters are in Zambia, because it's at the intersection of the East African power pool with the Southern African power pool, when the two connect.
You're the cog of the wheel. Everything comes through you.
Exactly. Well, not through Greenco, but through Zambia.
Yeah.
That's for
Yeah.
And so I don't want anyone to misunderstand. Goodness me, it's all about them. No. We are a little element in this entire piece, but I see very exciting opportunities in other regional power pool markets in the region. It's all about demonstration effect. As soon as we demonstrate one project brought on the back of this model, and through our model, we are proving that the regional power pool, the Southern African power pool, is a bankable marketplace Once that happens, it'll mushroom on its own. It'll have, it's not going to be dependent on green core. It's going to just
get its own
flow
life.
matter of
Yeah. So does Africa Union and Continental Free Trade Agreement, does that have an effect to power trading?
Yes, absolutely. Africa Union they have an effect from the perspective of policy direction, from the perspective of showing that all countries on the continent are united in the view that power trading and the role of regional power pools is extraordinarily important.
But the Continental Free Trade Agreement, is there element there that you guys can say that works for us, like that's important legislation for us?
Legislatively, not so much. It's more policy encouragement for harmonization of legislation on regional basis, which already SADC, regional regulator RERA, the Southern African Power Pool are pushing, as are the national regulators in each country. So it's more that we see the Free Trade Continental Treaty and the African Union role on this from the perspective of policy guidance that is then implemented at regional and national level.
So do you then look for if you were to say to a country or to a region, what would be your preference? I want to talk to this country because you're a linchpin for your region, or do you want to try and say, I want the 6 of you to agree to something and go forward?
I think on a national basis.
Okay.
Because yes, unfortunately, I would have said originally, no, let's start regional because harmonization is best done immediately. But I think that's a long process. I think it stops implementation if you wait for regional harmonization. I started to realize that just proving by doing, and whether it be just on a small national basis, has much more impact than waiting for regulatory changes or otherwise on a regional basis harmonization wise that might take into account the speed of technological advancement, innovation, etc., energy changes that might be made redundant a year later, but it has stopped the market from developing for a number of years until we wait for harmonization. So in a way, I would say perhaps not best to wait for it.
And then the question then that I have would be, say, if you were to talk to a country, whether it be minister or technocrat or whoever, what would you say to them is important for energy security through energy trading?
What is important? It's important to have multiplicity of players in your energy sector. It's important not to rely on single solutions. It's important to provide clarity and support to both public and private sector from the policy perspective. And it's important to help to recognize that new innovative business models should be encouraged from bottom up, like we have done in Zambia. And we wouldn't be here were it not for numerous technocrats in Zambia.
Yeah.
They are the reason why we are here. This conversation took place with them in 2017, and we are where we are because of them.
They saw the opportunity or the need.
Absolutely. I mean, we would never, ever have been here without numerous technocrats who bought into the vision. So it's not so much our vision, it's their vision. I would actually go so far as to say that they already had the vision. It was clear. It wasn't the vision that was the problem. What was the problem is that the funding models of how we are attracting new generation capacity in sub-Saharan Africa were stuck in this bilateral model of give me a PPA with a state utility and then a guarantee from the state fiscal. It was the appetite of the funders also that restricted the movement towards the markets that local stakeholders already envisaged for themselves. What we brought is a tool through which those financiers will be more ready to take the risks when we start unpacking that model that they were so comfortable with for so many years, but the model that is unscalable and hasn't delivered enough electrification. So in a way, that's what we brought. How do you make the model, the vision? Zambia already had always had a vision to have be the center of power trading in the region. How do you bridge that with a model that makes those projects bankable whilst tying it to that vision?
So from there, I look at it and I say, with the energy that is being produced on the continent already, there's all kinds of different projects, large and small. What is the capacity of the continent currently if it had effective trading mechanisms? As in, I don't know, ballpark it, percentage. The continent could do 50% of its energy needs if it had energy trading. It could do 20%. Like what could the continent handle for itself if it had proper trading, you know, in like you've solved, because trading equals bankability equals, you know, there's so many things. Where does the continent sit right now?
I mean, we know what the continent needs, right? I mean, the trading at the moment is it's not very large. I mean, we're talking about on the Southern African power pool around 100 and it's really, compared to any Nord Pool or any other trading pools, we're talking about very small levels. But what we should be looking at is not only how much could be traded, which then takes into, it's very difficult to project it. And I'm telling you why, because you have the current transmission capacity in the current power pools doesn't allow you to move immediately into a power trading model that can scale rapidly, because you will be restricted by transmission capacity. So what is important to look at is the following: how much will it cost, and what are the savings if you utilize regional power pools to de-risk new generation capacity and to bank new transmissional capacity on a regional basis? And if you look at World Bank and other reports, we're talking about 20 to 45 billion US dollars savings if we start looking at it in such an integrated manner. And those savings come from not only the fact that we are not requiring fiscal support once you are providing a route to market for individual national projects, but that you are making the entire thing more bankable. So we know the scale of the need. We are projecting rapid increase in merchant Southern African power pool competitive market trade. So at the moment, about 15 to 20% is traded on a competitive market basis. The rest goes on a bilateral basis. We see an increase in competitive market share growing every single year. So we think it's an absolutely exciting opportunity going forward, but it has to be looked at in a systemic way so that those transmission capacity needs are helped by new business models like ours, which showcase how much new capacity is being brought on board. And when I talk about new capacity, we recently launched our regional procurement IPP round. And within 2.5 months, we got more than 3,000 megawatts of expression of interests from IPPs across sub-connected countries, which is incredible. And these are very reputable developers and very good projects. So that's a fantastic indication of interest. And in terms of demand requirements, it's huge. At the moment, the Southern African power pool is, we would say, probably on projections in deficit to about 2,500 megawatts, and much, much more taking into account the load shedding that is currently taking place in South Africa. And the fact that as of yesterday, the Zimbabwean side of Kariba shut down because the water reservoirs were completely utilized. So Zimbabwe as a country is now left with 350 megawatts of capacity on a national basis. We're talking about decommissioning of power plants in South Africa, which up to 2031 will result in decommissioning of 14,000 megawatts from South Africa's existing capacity. So in terms of the need, it's not looking good. And we all need to work together to bring new generation capacity on board ASAP. If not, there will be significant load shedding and challenges ahead, which of
the
course
daisy chain effect here. You know, one person makes a choice, but it affects their regional partners over and over.
Absolutely.
I don't think so many people expect that. They always talk about South Africa and they don't see the daisy chain of how this goes. So the banks that are supporting you or the investors that are supporting you, are you finding a change of mindset in the South African community, or is it the European community? Who's clicked, went, oh, you know, that makes sense. We're going to support you. Names aside, you can say regions. You don't have to give names unless you want.
To be honest, as of today's days across board, when we started in 2016, we were called mad. As simple as that. Absolutely crazy and mad. I mean, I've been personally called crazy on panels, on everywhere. I mean, literally just mad. So yeah, that was challenging. But then we were incubated at that early time by the Rockefeller Foundation, and then Convergence, the Canadian Foundation, and the P4G, mainly funded and supported by the government of Denmark. And without these three organizations, it would have been impossible for us to see the light of day. They really took high risk, high impact funding to allow for what is potentially transformative model, but that everyone told them might not see the light of day. Things started really changing when, from around 2019, we started discussing with our first equity investors. So current funders are the Danish IFU, so the investment arm for the government of Denmark, PIDGE, Infraco Africa, mainly funded by the government of the UK, and European Commission's Electrify. And it really goes to their credit that they have supported an innovative business model, again, which, whether they wanted it or not, was high risk, but high impact. But it changed the entire conversation by putting really boots on the ground and an entity that's on the offtake side and not just on the generation side. And then when it goes to wider lending community, I mean, invaluable support from the French development agency, AFD, invaluable support from a number of banks that just contributed to our model with ideas, with thoughts. In particular, Standard Bank on the commercial side, a number of other banks. We worked extremely closely with the Development Bank of Southern Africa, with a number of institutions under the AFD umbrella. I mean, African Development Bank, the IFC, you name it, everybody contributed with ideas. But now the proof is in the pudding. And the bravest of all are those who are willing to lend on the back of our PPA.
Right.
And in our first project is in Zambia, and we are buying from a 25 megawatt solar PV project in Western province of Zambia called Ilute Solar. They won our first procurement round, and they just got two reputable very well-known lenders as to become their mandated lenders. I don't really know if I'm allowed to disclose them, so I'm not going to, but it's going to be
that's fair enough, because time goes by, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's going to be announced very soon, and really credit goes to them that they worked with us for more than a year to really understand what is this merchant market risk they're taking? What are these new rules? What is the Southern African power pool? How can it provide a route to market? And really lots of credit to finance institutions who have been so set in how they look at project finance risk to start reopening and reassessing by considering a model such as GreenCo.
I find it fascinating that some of those institutions that supported you at the beginning were willing, risk takers from the global north that said, hey, is this charity or is this, a new business model? And calling a spade a shovel. You're a female, you're in Africa, you're working in energy, they're checking their boxes and they're going, yep, that works. Yep, that works. If it worked, but at the end of the day, you're a shining light. And all of a sudden it becomes, oh, this really is a way that we can move capital from the global north to growing an energy need on scale. And it's a win for them, but I think it's a win, like you said, for a change in the psychology of a financial model of how this works. It's not about, oh, let's get this developer in this PPA and do. No, the risk isn't there. Like it's something completely different.
Exactly. No, that was really an incredible journey to date.
Absolutely. Like I said, 10-year overnight success, fine, it's 5-year overnight success, but still it's, there you are. Well, Ana, I'll leave you with the closing comments. Is there anything that you want to make sure that the world understands about the potential that is the marketplace of trading energy in Africa?
I would say the world requires new markets, and the world requires, it's never been more geopolitically divided than it is today. Africa is certainly open to business. Opportunities are absolutely everywhere, and funding is required. So get your boots on the ground and try and see where those opportunities and potentials are, but more importantly, what problems can you solve? The days of packaging problems and solutions from somewhere else, or just moving and copying and pasting them, are truly over. And the problems have to be down from bottom up and in collaboration with relevant stakeholders on the ground, which was always our motto. If they don't see the value add to what we are doing, we cannot grow and scale, and they will not grow and scale with us. So we have to take the local utilities and everyone alongside with us, as it is not winner takes all approach. So that's what I would say. It's all about boots on the ground. Come and join us, live in Lusaka. It's a wonderful city, and enjoy the sunshine and the rain when it comes.
Wonderful. Ana Hajduka, thank you so much for taking your time on. I know you've got a busy day and lots of stuff going on. So thanks for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. And we look forward to seeing your growth over the next 5 years. It's going to be amazing.
Thank you very much.
Now, wasn't that a spectacular discussion with Ana Hajduka? The opportunities that exist in the energy merchant side, the energy trading side, the finance sector, the way this totally revolutionizes finance on the continent for energy projects. Ana, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Energy and Africa. And folks, tune in next time, because we just don't know who we're going to chat with next. Thanks again, and have a great new year.